Hi Khizar,
Hi, what's up, Haris?
welcome to Kaam Kahani. That's what's up.
Thank you.
And just to introduce you to our audience, Khizar is a friend, but he's also an entrepreneur. He runs a chemicals manufacturing company here in Karachi. So Khizar, just to start things off, what does it take to run a chemicals company or any company here in Pakistan?
Well, I think first and foremost, you have to really be dedicated. Simply because in Pakistan, you assume that whatever line of business you're in, you will have expertise and knowledge in that area, and so there's that technical side, which is the easy side to get a grip on. But then there are lots of systemic things. For example, roads being broken. You don't have a consistent power supply, you don't have consistent gas supply, you don't have consistent water supply. And so whilst on the one side you're managing what you deem to be your true business, but then you're also managing a lot of things that are the inefficiencies of the system. So especially for someone like me who is in the small sized manufacturing sector, you definitely need to be an all-rounder. So where you're taking care of technical things, commercial things, but at the same time you're taking care of issues related to electricity, gas, water, strikes and all those things.
I discovered that Pakistan ranks 108th out of 190 countries in the ease of doing business sort of index.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of navigate that? Is it easy? How do you learn something like that? How do you learn to navigate?
Well, I think that ease of doing business, what that means is that the system is very broken, right? So anything you want to do that's at a government level, and that can be something as basic as getting an electric connection, gas connection, water connection. It can be something like getting a property transferred. It can be something like getting your factory registered with a government entity like the Engineering Development Board of Pakistan, or perhaps the Environmental Protection Agency. And in all those kinds of things that are part of business, it's a real struggle, and there isn't a defined procedure, and it requires a lot of improvisation. So what that means is, of course, for me, that I have to develop a network of people who can assist me with these kinds of things, where it's not easy to do business in Pakistan. The way to manage that is to have a team of people or have a network of friends and family who have done those things before, and so they can help you navigate that. It's not something that I can do on my own. I definitely need the help of those who've done it before.
And I bet it's not something that comes naturally and intuitively. You have to learn it sort of on the job, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you're someone who's a true son of the soil and you've grown up in Pakistan, you know the streets, you know the thinking on the street,
Right.
And you've sort of grown up alongside the kind of people who are working in the government, the kind of people who are
running the show, then it's probably a bit easier. But if you're sort of marginalized like myself, in the sense that if you've had the opportunity or the misopportunity of going abroad, or if you come from even a little bit of privilege and you live in a little bit of a bubble in Pakistan, so then you are not connected to that reality of how things work here, how work gets done in Pakistan. There is a way in which things get done, and those are not things that you can learn at university, and they're not things that you can learn by getting an education in the US or the UK. So I mean, that brings me to my next question. Privilege. Let's talk about privilege. You come from a business family, and I mean, is that a prerequisite for success in the business world, to come from that, and what are the challenges of having that kind of privilege, if any?
Okay. Well, I have limited privilege, I would say, but I think, see, the good thing about privilege is that whatever experience that your father or your chacha or the generation who's been running the business before you, whatever experience and wisdom they've gained, that would transmit to you. And where you're starting off in your career, you would benefit from all of their experience and wisdom.
Yes.
And I think that's a great advantage to have. The other thing with privilege is that it's easier to take risks because you have some capital available to you. So if you have a business idea or you sense an opportunity, then you have the funds to try and execute that opportunity. However, you asked about what are some of the challenges of privilege, and I think one of the biggest challenges of privilege is lack of motivation. Because if you don't have privilege and if survival is a struggle for you, so then earning money to survive is the biggest motivator. Whereas for someone who has privilege, the electricity, all the utility bills in the house are paid for. There is some domestic help in the house, and you never go hungry. And so that's survival, which is a great source of motivation. That source of motivation is not there for those who have.
So how did you build that skill? How did you build, because I know you're a motivated guy. Yeah. How did you build that motivation, despite what you said, with that privilege?
Well, I didn't, right? In the sense that because I didn't have the survival ka motivation, if I reflect back on my work experience and the choices I've made, I have focused a lot less on making money, because there was always, some support around, and instead my focus was on things that I was passionate about or things that I loved. And so in my company, my focus was very much skewed towards human development, and I was very interested in developing people who were working in the company and bringing in new people in the company who would be an asset to the company in the long run. Similarly, I was quite passionate about leadership and having outstanding teamwork in the organization. So that kind of changed my focus, whereas I see that a lot of people would be focused very much on making money, which is a very good focus to have. So coming back to what you said, I would say that now that I'm a little bit older, and now that I have I'm more independent and more responsible for managing my expenditure and running my own house. I'm definitely more money-minded now, but I certainly spent my 30s not being so money-minded, and instead pursuing a lot of my passions and even running business with a certain kind of style and attitude that was in line with my values and my beliefs.
One of the questions that I want to ask you is, as an employer of technical and non-technical people, what do you think, when people come to you as employees, what do you think are some of the things that are not being taught in schools and that should be taught in schools? What are some of the skills that are left out?
I think you used the perfect word, that skills are what's left out, right? So if someone is graduating from a university with an economics degree, they may know some economics, or if they've studied accounts, they may know accounts. If they've studied chemical engineering, they would know some chemical engineering. But what's missing is the skills, and by skills I mean communication skills, presentation skills, team working skills, leadership skills, and those are the sorts of skills that are missing. So when it comes to people development, a lot of my focus is in trying to get people to develop that, and if someone already has that ability but is not using that, to try and get them to unleash that talent that they have.
You think that schools and universities could sort of focus more on that, and how would they do something like that?
Absolutely. So that's how education is designed. For example, all the sport that you play in school is not just for fun. When you play sport, you learn how to operate as a team. When you have a sport team and someone is the captain of a team, the captain is definitely learning leadership skills. Similarly, when you do extracurricular activities, you learn teamwork. In school, when you present your assignments, you learn presentation skills. In school, when you participate in extracurricular activities like drama, like music, that's an opportunity for you to improve your communication skills. So a big part of education, besides your chosen degree, a large part of education is to develop and grow the person holistically. And the growth of the person depends very much on these kinds of skills. The minute you come into the real world, after you graduate and you come into the real world, it's important that you know your chosen degree, you know, whatever that may be. So you need to have that knowledge, but at the same time you need to be an effective person. And what it means to be an effective person is that you are organized, you can plan, you can work well with others, i.e. teamwork, you can lead others so that you know, so that you can gain traction and get ahead in life, and you can communicate well so that people can understand you and there are less misunderstandings.
Right. If you had a chance to go back in time to the 20-year-old Khizar, what advice would you give to him?
Wow, that's a really tough question.
I know it is. It is. I ask the tough questions. This is hard talk.
So, what advice might I give the 20-year-old Khizar?
Yeah, I mean, you know, take your time. I mean, you don't have to have any regrets.
So I think there's lots of advice I could give the 20-year-old Khizar. One of them would be that if you found something that's your groove, something that you like, then don't let the distractions in life derail you from what you like or love, right? If you've made the choice to go into a particular profession and you're having challenges and but you still like it, then I think you just stick it out and you get through the tough period. And always, like, once you get through the tough period in a particular chosen area, uske baad jo hai, there is a lot of things get easier and you move along.
You think there was something like in your 20s or when you were 20 that you discovered that you really liked, that you had a passion for, but you couldn't pursue it?
Absolutely. I can give you a great example. I can give you an example from drumming. Right. So here we go. So I used to play drums when I was at university. I was a paid musician. So I would play at cafes at the university. And the reason I stopped playing drums back then was because I would look at other drummers and I'd be like, wow, how is it that they can play the drums so fast? There's something called a roll in drumming, which is when you do
the drum roll,
right, left, right, left, right, left, and you can. I was like, wow, these other drummers can do it so fast, and I just cannot do it no matter what I do. And so I assumed at that time that maybe physiologically, like my muscles or my arms or whatever, that I don't have what it takes physiologically to be able to pull that off. And I was like, so it's pointless playing drums if I can't play as fast as others.
Yeah.
And so I let drums be on the side. 15 years later, I discover something called the Muller method. And what that says is that basically the drummers who are playing fast, it's not that they are playing fast per se. You can't see their hands moving so fast, but there is a particular technique that allows you to double your speed without doubling the effort.
So it feels like they're playing faster than they are.
Yeah.
It sounds faster.
It sounds very, very fast. When you look at their hands, they don't look very fast. So there's something in the technique that allows you to get 2 strikes for every 1 strike that you can see.
So I mean that's a great story. It's like a metaphor for how one shouldn't compare oneself to others without having the whole picture known.
Absolutely. And I think what I would add to that is that with that attitude of sort of not comparing yourself to others, what you also need to keep in mind is that you have to constantly keep learning. And 2 kinds of learning. One is the learning that you get from, reading about something or hearing about something or watching something. And the other learning is that you get by doing something. So as long as you're keeping both those learnings in order, so that you're taking in the learning that you get from information, and then you put it to practical use and you practice. If you're doing that, then you will certainly keep moving forward.
And so what are the things that you're currently learning because of what you do as an entrepreneur, as a businessman? What are some of the things that you keep picking up?
Well, I would say that I had my first drum lesson after about 20 years. My last drum lesson was in Boston in 2001 probably. So, so I just had a drum lesson 2 weekends ago by a drummer who was traveling to Pakistan from the US, Taylor Simpson. And so that was my first drum lesson. So surely I'm relearning the drums, and so that's one thing that's come back into my life after a long departure.
Well, that's good. Congratulations. That's great.
But you also asked about business. That what is it that I'm learning in business? I suppose that I'm in the chemicals manufacturing space, and although there's been a really exciting journey for me, I've learned a lot along the way. It's not been a big booming financial success for me. I've had limited commercial success, and part of that has to do with the line of work that I've chosen, but part of that probably also has to do with the kind of person that I am. How suited am I for this chosen line of work? And so so I'm realizing that there are other business opportunities out there that I should consider, and I'm starting to diversify. And one of the areas in which I'm diversifying is land development. And so right now I'm teaching myself about that. And maybe 10 years ago, I would think that, oh, this is a great business, let's make some bricks, and I might just go ahead and try and make some bricks and try and make some money out of it. But now, with the benefit of experience, I'm not going to start making bricks. I will do a lot of study related to bricks. I will find out how much bricks sell for. I will find out where the bricks are sold, at what payment terms are they sold. Then I'll find out how much does it cost to make a brick. I'll find out who are the biggest brick makers in the country. Sure. I will try and visit them.
Watch a podcast on brick making.
Watch a podcast, yeah. And so what I'm saying is that I would do the market research related to my business idea. I would go to the competitors. I would go to the customers. And also I would see if the competitors are in the unorganized sector, then I would try and stay away from that business. And if the competitors are in the organized sector, then I would try and get into that business. And by organized and unorganized sector, I mean that if you're competing against people who are operating at a very, very small cottage industry level, and they don't have to pay, say, electricity bills, gas bills, and they don't have to pay their labor fairly. So they have very low costs. And if I'm in the organized sector, where I'm having to pay the labor fairly, where I'm having to pay all the taxes and I have to pay for all the utilities. So in that case, my costs are higher. So if you go into a business where the competitor is in the unorganized sector and I am in the organized sector, then I will not be able to compete with them.
So I mean, that sort of begs the question, like, how does one really measure the potential of different opportunities? Like, so if I'm out and I see, oh, there's a need for smaller cars or whatever, XYZ, how do I figure out if this is a good opportunity or not? How does one go about sort of measuring the potential of different opportunities?
Yeah, so one of the things you would look at is what is the size of the market, right? So for example, if you were, I don't know, selling teacups, if your idea is that maybe I should sell crockery, so then you would be interested to know, well, how much crockery is consumed in Pakistan every year. And then you might say, okay, well, I want to make high-end, do you want to make high-end crockery or low-end crockery? It's a question to you. If you were
high-end,
say, okay, so then your next question should be, how much high-end crockery is consumed in Pakistan? So you would want to know that, and then once you know that, you might ask yourself, well, is a buyer of high-end crockery going to buy crockery that's made in Pakistan? So you will ask yourself that question. You will probably go into the market and see how well the existing crockery manufacturers are doing. So if the existing crockery manufacturers are doing very well and they're growing year on year, that would give you some clue as to the attractiveness of this opportunity. Whereas if the existing crockery manufacturers are in a decline or they're not growing very much, so then you can make some broad assumptions that maybe this is not a very good opportunity.
It sounds like a very systematic way of doing things, and so it is. But do you think this kind of thinking comes intuitively to people, especially younger people?
Yeah, I think for folks who come from business families, there's a lot of it that is this kind of understanding and analysis that gets transmitted through the generations. But certainly anyone who's done an MBA or who's studied perhaps economics, they would have clear frameworks or clear kinds of tools and exercises that they can use to evaluate an opportunity. So there are many methods to evaluate an opportunity, and those methods are available to you everywhere.
Yeah.
But what all these tools are trying to do is they're trying to answer a few questions, right? One question they're trying to answer is that whatever product or service that you're looking to get into, how big is that? How big a market is that? Is that a market where you can sell 1 crore a month, or is that a market that's 100 crores a month, or is that bigger? They're trying to answer the question of the customers that you will sell to if you go into this business. Are those customers going to give you a really tough time, or are they going to be welcoming of you? They're trying to answer the question that the line of work you get into, you will depend on certain suppliers.
Right.
So will those suppliers be hostile towards you, or will they be collaborative towards you? And they're trying to answer that you, where you are today, with your skills, experience, with your money and with your infrastructure and setup that you possess, are you a good fit for this line of work, or are you a misfit for this line of work? So these are some broad things that these these kinds of tools are trying to answer.
And so you're saying, like, before anyone starts a business or jumps into it, they should do their research, and they should sort of have a profound sort of level of understanding of their environment, of their own potential and strengths.
Well, let's think about it like this. Say if you want to do economics, you spend 4 years, 3 years at the university learning economics, right? Now, if you want to make your crockery, you don't want to go and start making crockery. You want to spend 3, 4, 6, 8 months learning about the crockery business.
Yeah.
How is it made? Where is it made? Where is it sold? How much is it sold for? How much does it cost? Who are the big customers? Who are the big producers? You got to know about the entire world of crockery before you start making the crockery. And so I think for anyone who's looking to get into business, they should not be rushing towards investing their money and their resources. Rather, they should spend all their time and all their hard work in doing all the market research that they can, in learning as much about the environment in which they will be operating, in meeting people who've already done this before, and thereby trying to get a good sense of whether this business opportunity is worthwhile or not. And you would produce certain concrete results before you start the opportunity. For example, you will do a market survey, which would be a concrete piece of, there would be a document that you will produce that will tell you what the market potential is.
Right.
You will do a competitor analysis, which will tell you who the competitors are. You will do a customer analysis. You will speak to distributors perhaps who will sell the product for you, etc. So you would do all these things, and these things don't require investment. What these things require is dedication and time. So if you're serious about a business that you want to get into, then you start off by doing the homework. And once you've done a few months of homework and you've produced, you've done the analysis, after that you will be in a position to make a decision as to how attractive this business opportunity is. And that's the decision that really matters. And what's important is not that you have a business idea and you go ahead and you execute it. What's more important is that you have a business idea and you're able to evaluate it exhaustively and then decide whether this business opportunity is good, average or poor. If it's an average opportunity or a poor opportunity, don't go ahead with it. If it's a good opportunity, then by all means go ahead, then invest your money and go right ahead. If it turns out that the opportunity is not worth doing, then you leave that business opportunity, you don't put your money in it, you look for another business opportunity and you begin again. Once again, you spend 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, however long, doing your analysis related to the new business idea.
That's awesome. I felt like I just did a mini-MBA.
I haven't done an MBA, so thanks.
Like, what are some of the myths that were dispelled for you? Things which you didn't know about before you actually got into it?
सबसे बड़ी जो myth थी ना, वो एक तो ये थी कि यार मैं बड़ा I'm an intelligent person. I've done well in school. I've done well in university, and so certainly I'll do well in business. That was one of the first myths that got dispelled. I think the real world is a different world to the academic world. Largely because in the academic world, you are the customer. I mean, I am the customer. When I go to school, when I go to university, I am a customer. I am a paying customer. I pay the school, I pay the university. Yeah. I have a positive experience because I am a paying customer. When I go out into the real world, I'm not a paying customer. I'm out there to make a buck. I'm there to earn.
Right.
And it's a completely different world. And so what got you through in academics as a paying customer is not going to get you through real life. So I found that my smarts didn't help me too much, and there was no way to go ahead other than to learn how business is done around here. And I had to learn how business is being done in Pakistan. And so that was one of the first myths that got dispelled. Some other myths that might have gotten dispelled, for example, I thought that I could do pretty much anything on my own. And that myth got dispelled pretty quickly because I realized that, if I'm going to put all my focus on commercial things, for example, then surely I need someone else who's going to put all their focus on the technical things. And so the need for having a good team where different people specialize in different areas, that's extremely important.
That's very important, you're right. And when you're a student...
I might add another myth.
Which one?
Which is about work-life balance. And I absolutely value my work-life balance, and I think compared to a lot of my friends, I've had a very lenient life, and I've worked fewer hours than most of my peers. And I've spent more hours with, let's say, family and with friends and with my hobbies and passions and exploration, whereas my friends have spent more hours working. So I've had a very good work-life balance. And although that work-life balance has really improved the quality of every day that I've lived, now when I look back, if you look back over a 10-year or a 15-year period, there is a price to be paid for that. Because the person who's working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, if you calculate how many hours a year he's putting in, and then if you calculate how many hours he's put in 10 years, that's a lot of hours. Whereas if you compare that to someone who's putting in, let's say 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, maybe in 10 years you'll have almost half as many hours. And so the person who's doing the longer hours consistently 6 days a week, in 10 years time, he's not going to be slightly ahead of you. He's going to be many levels ahead of you. So one of the myths that I had was that if I have a wonderful work-life balance and I design my life such that a typical week has some work in it, some family in it, some friends in it, some music in it, and some exploration in it, well, there is a cost associated with that.
But is that not a realistic dream? Is that not doable?
I think it's doable. I've done that for many years, and I think that's doable. But at the same time, it's not doable all the time. I can, now that I have, say, full responsibility for my business, I can't do that all the time. I can't do that every week. There's certainly some months in the year where the work is there's so much work that needs to be done that my work-life balance is then not a concern for me anymore. And then there are certain months in the year where there's businesses going at a pace where I can take more time away. So I suppose that my main learning with work-life balance is that it's not fair to start out with work thinking that this is the work-life balance that I want. I think a better way to do it is to say that how can I work smartly and in the fewest number of hours achieve excellent results. So you work out what amount of work is required to achieve good results. After that, whatever time is left, you use that in doing whatever activities you're interested in. Rather than to say, nahi ji, I will only work 35 hours a week. Well, maybe you may not succeed if you put in 35 hours, and maybe you need to, when you're starting out with a new business or if you're in the early stage of your career, maybe that's a time when you should be putting in 55 hours a week and not 35 hours a week.
And I guess you have to sort of break that balance in order to, ironically, in order to achieve that balance. You have to sometimes work more in order to later be able to work less and enjoy more family time and enjoy more of your passions, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely an idea that we grew up with, right? Which is that if earlier in your life you put in all the hard work, then later on things will be easier and more comfortable for you. But I don't think that that's the case. In reality, I don't think that's the case, because when we had those ideas, we lived in a world that changed slowly, and now we live in a world that's changing very rapidly. And by the time you manage to find a groove and get slightly comfortable, it turns out that suddenly dunya hi change ho gayi hai. I mean, I'll give you some examples of massive changes that have happened that have forced us to relearn and reimagine what to do and how to go about doing work. For example, in the 90s, China didn't matter. Right now, in the 2020s, China is making everything. Right? Largest producer in the world and the lowest cost producer in the world. So the world has changed, So 20 years ago, we had local competition. There was e-commerce didn't exist. Well, now you have global competition. So surviving in local competition, of course, is very easy and much more profitable. Surviving in the era of global competition is much more difficult, and you make a lot less return on your investment. So the world keeps changing, and it changes in very dramatic ways.
So it's not, these times are when you can't be comfortable. You can't just afford to get comfortable with anything. You just have to sort of keep moving and keep learning and keep sort of innovating.
Absolutely, and I think that for people who are in Pakistan, it's easier to see the change coming, because the change that comes in the world, it starts off with the more developed countries. It starts off in the West, and then slowly over the years that change trickles through to Pakistan. So e-commerce happened in America first and in Europe first, and then slowly it made its way to Pakistan. So if you're in Pakistan and you want to find out what's going to be happening 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, 2 years down the line, you don't have to do any guesswork. You just see what's happening in the developed countries. You know, what are the emerging technologies there? What are the ways of doing work there? And surely, not all of it, but a lot of it is going to filter through to Pakistan in times to come.
Do you benefit from that lag in how things come?
Yeah.
Like, what excites you about your week, about your day, about your life in general? Like,
well, I think that, see, one of the things that puts a smile on my face is the kind of people I spend my days with. And that begins with my family, where alhamdulillah I enjoy very healthy relations, within the family, with my wife, with my kid, with my family. And so the environment is very harmonious and positive, and so that's something to look forward to. You know, like I'd rather wake up in the morning and be in a positive environment than wake up in the morning and be in a cranky environment. You know, so that's, I think that's thing, and similarly, and that extends to my workplace. I run a small business. We're about 30-40 people in the office. I know everybody, and my colleagues are like my family. I mean, they are my family in a sense, and I spend as much time with them as I do with my family. And so what motivates me about the work environment is that friendly, close, open, honest environment where I feel sort of that I'm with my equals, with my brothers and my sisters at work. And that's a real source of motivation for me.
As a person who runs a factory, a manufacturing facility, is it easy sort of treating everyone as your equals? Is it productive? Is that the best thing to do? Is that sort of an unpopular thing to do? And if so, like, how do you effectively be sort of a leader especially at a factory, at a manufacturing facility?
No, I don't think it's easy striking that balance, and I think there's a certain kind of boss that will push the people to do the work with the singular focus of getting as much work done. I think those bosses succeed, and their businesses do really well. I'm not that kind of a boss. My focus is more that it's more of a long-term view, and I am giving up short-term gains for the long-term gains. And my view is that whoever's working at Mijocum, if they are made to feel welcome there, if they're given growth opportunities, if they are allowed to flourish and make mistakes and learn from their mistakes, if they're encouraged to participate in innovation, if they're encouraged to share all their learnings with their peers, so be in an environment where there's collaboration and not competition amongst the colleagues, if they're given leadership opportunities, if they're recognized for wherever they're able to contribute successfully. So I feel that in that environment, that's the environment in which stars are born. And I've seen that happen at my workplace. The end of the day, I'm not looking to run a business where I lead the business and I tell everybody what to do, and so the business does well because I'm so smart. No. I'm looking to provide the platform and the opportunities and an environment to those people who are in my company so that they can rise to be better than I am. At the very minimum, the technical people, they should definitely be far more technically competent than I am. And the commercial people ought to be far more commercially competent than I am. And so I want to create an environment where they can, you know, make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, rise up from the ashes again, and then lead the company so that they can take ownership for their areas of the company and lead it with the kind of speed, with the kind of devotion that I possibly cannot. I only have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hands. But if a lot of people on my team can work with the same kind of like passion, dedication and commitment that I do, so then surely the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
So then we'll have that kind of situation where the whole is much greater than the sum of its parts. We'll have a lot of synergies, and that's where the magic will happen.
Khizar, thank you for being on Kaam Kahani. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure everyone learned a lot from your experiences.
You're welcome, yaar. Thank you very much for having me here.